Well, it's Friday, the 24th of July, 2026. A beautiful day when we choose to be led by the dreams in our hearts and not by the fears around us. Welcome to your perfect morning starter on Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Bukola. Good morning. We're broadcasting live from Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital. I'm Kelly. Guys, the TGIF edition of the show, we get to round things off this morning. But then again,
it's an eventful Friday.
Very eventful Friday. We have a power-packed show for you, but guess what? Let's begin with news around the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway again. Our reporter, Willie Bong, somewhere around 12 a.m. had put up a statement that giving us updates that outbound Lagos, there's this traffic on the car axis. So that's what you're looking at right now. Up till now, everywhere is blocked. We understand our colleague Jeffrey is with us virtually. Jeff?
Good morning, Kelly. Good morning, Bukola. I just have to keep I'm in the car. Permit me. Good morning, Nigerians. I've been just bonding around Nigeria and Lagos today. Literally, I've been everywhere. Let me see what I can see. Just talk to you guys. So this is me. I'm heading. I had to go from the Magoda area, heading to the express, like I'm going to the Third Mainland Bridge, got into Alausa to pass through Ojodu to come to Bega. So this is the situation I found myself. This is me from Ojodu, like you're coming from Ogba towards Bega, heading to, coming from Ogba towards Bega, trying to navigate my way back into the express. It's literally a lockdown, no movement, literally. If there's a word bigger than gridlock, this is it. So guys, maybe I have to do the show through this, but don't worry, I will not be driving and talking so much. I'm only talking because, as I said, it's a gridlock, literally. So we're not moving that much, just baby steps. So I'm just, let's say, 200 to 300 meters away from Bega bus stop itself. So when I get to Bega, I will now know what lies ahead of me. But I saw on the other part that people were using one way, whether that's the official way now, we do not know. But if you're outbound, going out of Lagos, as we call it, trust me, you may have to chill wherever you are until this waits up, because right now it's a total, literal lockdown. As you said, we hear there was an accident. I haven't been there, so I don't know yet. So let me see what I can. Let me see that I can zoom. Okay, this is not zooming as much as I want. So if you look way ahead, I wish this can zoom as much as I want. Way ahead is Bega, just 200 to 300 meters away from me. But ahead of the, we're not very sure. So I'll keep navigating, James Bonding around there and see how this plays out eventually, guys.
Well, let's hope that your James Bond stunts will prove, to be productive this morning. But Jeffrey, we already got a heads up earlier in the day that something had happened. And by the time I arrived, the conflict point where you turn, from outbound Lagos into the other side, as though you were headed, out of Lagos to get into our own area, I could already see vehicles brazenly crossing and, passing one way, as we say, driving against traffic. Have you been able to identify what is responsible for the traffic? Have you heard anything from co-commuters who are also stuck in the gridlock?
Well, I haven't been able to discuss with everybody. Everybody has been trying to navigate one way. I wouldn't be surprised if people are using one way, because that looks like the only option right now if you're heading out of Lagos. And perhaps it's one of the things that the traffic officials. So what I'm telling you is that from where I am, I haven't been able to see what has caused this traffic. All I rely on is what I've been told. But we're all victims of whatever it is that has caused this traffic. If you can hear, I don't know whether you're hearing that sound. I have to use my Google map to help me understand how long it will take me from where I am to go into the office. This is not supposed to be it's not supposed to last more than 10-15 minutes, but I may be there maybe in another hour or so. So I haven't been able to speak to any I'm not sure any of us is aware of what has really caused this. But if you're seeing, let me turn this again so you can see on the other part of the road, traffic is moving. So you can see coming from Bega into Ogba, traffic is moving, and going to Bega is a gridlock. So that is the situation of things right now. Traffic using one way may actually be the only alternative, even though it's a violation of traffic. But the officials themselves may have to understand in the morning like this Friday, a lot of people are traveling out of Lagos whose families are not here, maybe going to visit their families on a Friday ahead of the weekend. So that's where we found ourselves.
Jeffrey, you're spot on there when you talk about the fact that there's a lot of movement, particularly on Fridays in this part of Nigeria. People leaving Lagos for the weekend, people work in neighboring Ogun State, some in Ibadan, and all of that, and they have to go for the weekend. What we're hearing, news just in, is that there have been actually 2 accidents, and we have images of those accidents that played out early hours of today, somewhere around 12 a.m. we hear there are 2 accidents on the Kara Bridge. On the Kara Bridge, that's what we've been told, on the Kara Bridge, and then somewhere around where you're just about to hit the Long Bridge as well. So you can imagine that within a stretch of just a few minutes away or even seconds away, 2 accidents happened on that stretch, and so those are the images you're looking at the moment. The Federal Road Safety Corps has put out a statement, and I'm trying to see if we can just read that statement here. The Federal Road Safety Corps, the FRC Lagos Sector Command, is wishing to inform the public that its rescue teams are currently managing the aftermath of multiple road traffic crashes that's occurred at the Kara Bridge along the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway in the early hours of today, Friday, 24th July. We hear the first crash, according to the FRC, occurred about 12:05 a.m. on the outbound carriageway towards Ibadan, involving 5 articulated trucks and 1 Toyota Sienna vehicle. And so it goes on and on. We hear that a total of 7 adult males were involved in the crash. We hear that 1 person has sadly lost his life, while another sustained injury. So that's the latest updates from the FRC, the Lagos State Command. And this perhaps puts a question mark to the Ogun State sector. This stretch is in Ogun State, and it's always the height of irresponsibility from the Ogun State government, because they are always very slow to react to events and accidents like this on this stretch, on the Ogun axis of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. So we are calling out the Ogun State government and the traffic management agencies, TRACE and all of that, to run. This accident happened around 12 a.m. This morning, the first accidents, and it's been about 7 hours after. We're yet to see the presence of traffic management agencies from the Ogun State government. So we need to do better, Ogun State, in reacting and responding to issues like this. Remember the Joshua Anthony incident when he visited Nigeria with some of his friends who were only in Nigeria for the first time, and what played out, and the response of emergency response of the emergency workers and all of that. So we need to do better on state.
And you know, Kelly, just a few days ago we were talking about the concern of the Kara portion, that expansion joint yeah. Just as you approach Kara, how it has begun to become dilapidated again, just about a week or 2 after we drew attention to it, when an accident happened.
Not live television. A week or 2.
Yeah,
matter of days. What I believe was used as a tentative measure was perhaps just cement and sand, and we emphasize that it's been raining, and that expressway is one of the busiest in this part of the continent. The heavy duty trucks, what we're even hearing is that perhaps one of the trucks was maybe either carrying rice or something. The one Jeff reported the other day was carrying fertilizer or something. This one was carrying rice or something. So apart from the fact that these are heavy duty trucks, they are also carrying heavy products, and you trust Nigeria. You know how we know how to overload. So if, for instance, well, let's not go there. Let's not go there.
And again, this accident happens again at Kara Bridge today. And so we call on,
accidents.
Security agencies, and not just security agencies, road maintenance agencies, the Federal Ministry of Works, to draw attention and resources to Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, all of those expansion joints, the Kara portion of the bridge, to be precise, such that, repair work, an enduring repair work can be done. Imagine the man-hours lost every time that there's an accident on this international route that we've so often highlighted. Not just man-hours lost, of course, directly related to that is revenue that will be lost as a result of gridlock, delay, and which is happening as we speak. Many who are, planning to travel outside Lagos or further inside Lagos today for whatever business or to visit families, it's a weekend, for crying out loud, will be unable to do so, as they will have to now delay their journey much later on. So we hope that we can report better development on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway sooner rather than later. But there's cheery news to tell this morning, Kelly, albeit with a mixed bag. We're hearing that President Bola Tinubu has approved the expansion of the Nigerian Army to 12 divisions. And in addition to that, he approved recruitment of 28,000 personnel to strengthen national security. According to the State House press release, this approval is underscoring the president's unwavering commitment to equipping the armed forces to address Nigeria's evolving security challenges effectively and to strengthen national defense capabilities further. Now, under the new structure, the Nigerian Army will operate 12 divisions. Prior to this time, there were 8, strategically positioned across the country as follows. Division headquarters, Kaduna, Kano, Katsina, and Jigawa states. Division headquarters in the southwest would be Ibadan, Oyo, Osun, Ekiti, and Ondo states. Division headquarters for the north central would be Jos, Plateau, Bauchi, and Gombe states. And division headquarters for Makurdi will be in Makurdi for Benue, Nasarawa, and Kogi states. Kelly, you have the others.
All right.
For the south, yes, that's the 5th number. It will be for Port Harcourt. In Port Harcourt for Rivers, Akwa Ibom, and Cross River State. Division headquarters for the northeast will be Maiduguri, Borno, and Yobe State.
Okay. So for Division 9, I believe.
Yes, Jalingo.
Division 9. Yes, so we have the headquarters in
Jalingo, Taraba, and Adamawa states.
All right, it's looking a bit mixed. Okay, that's Division 10 then, or 10 Division, headquarters in Jalingo, Taraba, and Adamawa states. 81 Division, headquarters Lagos and Ogun states. 82 covers the southeast region. Enugu is the headquarters, Enugu, Anambra, Abia, Ebonyi, and Imo states. And then 83 Division, Benin City, that's Edo, Delta
and Bayelsa states.
Bayelsa states. So it looks like cheery news for many Nigerians. You know how Division 7, which is Borno and Yobe, has always been like the action division, for many years now, because of the activities of insurgents, the Boko Haram, and all of that, bandits and all of that. So, but I think this is great news. I hope this is not about 2027. Because I see that in Nigeria, once an election year, for instance, the government becomes really very proactive, and they begin to put some things in place to show that. It's like sometimes they even keep these strategies, keep these plans for when it is close to elections, so that it places them, as a government that is working on all of that. So I hope this is not about 2027. I hope it's about the security architecture of Nigeria and improving that architecture indeed beyond these restructuring. So it's great news. I think some security experts have commended this, that it's going to help improve our security architecture. I hope it does, and I hope that this is not for political reasons. But there's something else we're tracking as well.
But just before we move on to other reports, I started by saying that this is somewhat sharing news, but with a mixed bag. And so, evidently, we cannot deny that this is a pointer to what is now emerging as the resolve, the demonstrable resolve of the administration to tackle the challenge of insecurity. Just yesterday, we talked about how President Donald Trump is commending President Bola Tinubu's efforts in the area of the fight against insurgency and kidnapping. But can this be backed with action? Less than 24 hours ago, a senator, I believe, or is there an honorable member, Monguno, was drawing attention to the concern. By the way, he hadn't said anything new at the time, of the lack of funding to the capital component of the budget, and was drawing attention to the overlapping budget. And we're also hearing from, according to reports, security agencies that they have not received, capital components of their budget. So if this has come through, as a policy statement from the presidency, we hope that it will be backed up with action. Of course, by all means, it is long overdue for us to begin to see the results of recruitment into the armed forces. By the way, this is not the first time that there has been an announcement that, there was a recruitment drive in the armed forces. But how has it shored up, especially boots on the ground, especially amid reports that we hear that soldiers take the fall time and again amid the battle against insurgency? So this is exciting news, but the capital component that will support this policy statement is more important. Perhaps that would be, one thing more to cheer than just reading out the statement itself. Kelly.
Yeah, so let's switch gears to the Enugu aircraft's story, which veered off the runway yesterday after landing at the Benin City airport. We saw those videos. I wish we can put it up for our viewers to see. We saw those videos. It was trending yesterday on Twitter. You see the aircraft there. I'm not sure. I was trying to just look at just when Enugu State launched this project. I'm not sure it's up to a year yet. I'm not sure it's up to 1 year. But some will say that, these things happen in the aviation industry. Sometimes these things happen, But we thank God as well that according to the reports, there was an emergency response. It was really very swift, and all passengers and crew members were safely evacuated, and that no injuries or fatalities were recorded. So, oh my word! But take a look at this, Bukola. When these things happen, trust Nigerians to always first capture it.
Become bystanders.
Oh my word! Oh my word! But we thank God.
By the way, you were talking about how long ago Enugu Air launched the airline. It was just about this time last year.
Oh, so it's already 1 year.
Yeah, it's already a year. And we had a conversation to the potential and the prospects of the airline. And as you have said, time and again we record aircraft skidding off the runway with concerns about air safety and the consequences. But we're glad to report that all passengers on board are safe, and this is perhaps an incident may be concerning, but that we hope that it doesn't occur again. Now, this is what I am particularly concerned about. The other day, there was an airline, a private aircraft that landed curiously on an expressway in Delta State.
Yeah.
And we saw people very close to a massive aircraft. Now we're seeing some people, maybe not just as close range as that particular incident, but close enough to show to elicit concerns of safety. Anytime something of this magnitude happens, Nigerians must learn, to be as far away from the incident as possible, as anything could happen. But this happened some hours ago, and we hope that this aircraft has taken off again, and all passengers on board have been evacuated to safety.
All right, so those are the stories we're tracking for you this morning. Again, we will get to get updates from my colleague Jeffrey who is experiencing this traffic, and I feel for anyone in that traffic this morning, because guess what? Nigerians are buying a liter of fuel at almost 1,400 naira. So I'm wondering, when you manage to buy fuel at that price, and then you're now having to stay in traffic for 30 minutes to 1 hour to 2 hours, I'm just wondering how Nigerians are going to take this. And then again, let's call out even road users, motorists as well as I mean, I call out the Ogun State government, but road users, motorists, Nigerians, for your own safety and the safety of other Nigerians who use these roads, please, we need to exercise patience. We need to exercise some sort of, I don't know if the word is maturity when we drive, because I mean, Bukola, you and I are familiar with this axis because we drive here. The average truck driver, you know how they drive. Some of them is like they intentionally want to use their trucks to intimidate and oppress other road users and drivers. So I think we have to do better, road users, and there's no point dragging. I think some time ago I said it on this platform that you know, we always say in Nigeria, no grief for anybody, no grief for anybody.
Certainly not on the expressway.
Not on the expressway, please. But for your safety and that of other road users. So that's my message. I'm just a liter of fuel,
1,300 naira per liter, and imagine now having to be in traffic for 1 hour.
Wow.
Just before we take a moment, there's a cheering news to report this morning as Africa's largest petroleum refinery, Dangote, has successfully completed a landmark $2.5 billion private equity placement. And according to the statement released by the refinery, the transaction is believed to be Africa's largest publicly disclosed primary equity private placement by value, as the enterprise's first equity capital raise shareholder base, and the offering marks a significant milestone and the continued development of African capital markets. Proceeds from the private equity placement, according to the refinery, will now support ongoing expansion of the refinery and petrochemical complex and strengthen the enterprise's capital structure, of course, and also provide additional financial flexibility for future growth initiatives. Now, this shows, Nigeria's appetite for, the prospects and the, potential and the growth of the downstream sector of the petroleum sector in the country, because this is certainly an oversubscription of the shares of the refinery. Kelly, I wonder if you bought some yourself.
Look, I filled my tank yesterday.
That's your concern, right?
I filled my tank yesterday for about 50,000 plus. This is the same car that I used to fill the tank at 8,000 to 12,000 max.
How long ago was that? I'm sure that's in 2023.
Yes, about 3 years ago. So I mean, this reality for many Nigerians, it's a bitter pill to swallow. So when we see all of this, I mean, I commend Dangote and what he's doing. I think I heard that he's back to selling the products in Naira. Thankfully, those issues will be resolved with the marketers and retailers and all of that. So this is commendable. Let's him keep making Nigerians and the continent proud. But I wish we can get to make the product a bit cheaper for Nigerians. That's a concern for many Nigerians.
Well, sadly, that is dependent on a lot of factors. The
local and international
in the Middle East, the price of crude oil in the international market, and all of those vagaries. When developments improve there, then we would, now be demanding, lower fuel prices, because it looks like after years of the conversations around the construction of this great behemoth, of an investment domiciled here at home, which, came with a lot of promise that by the time this, becomes a reality and becomes tangible, then Nigeria would exit those harrowing years of petroleum scarcity and difficulty. While petroleum scarcity has become a thing of the past, how much are Nigerians really buying petrol for, even though it is now produced here at home home. And that is the paradox that we hope that one day will be resolved. If, the country is one of Africa's largest crude oil producers, and yet, the people are struggling beneath the weight of ever-increasing prices of petroleum, then there are more questions than answers.
Absolutely. Well, this is the morning brief, so there you go, your top stories this morning we're tracking for you. Let's take a moment. When we come back, we'll take a look at the papers. We're back in just a moment. Please stay with us, everyone. Welcome back. So let's head to the national dailies. We're unable to connect with our guests. Let's see how we can fix that. But let's walk you through what the major headlines are saying on the papers this morning. We begin with this Nigeria. I hope I can pull that out very quickly. I'll begin with this Nigeria, or maybe I should just begin with the Nigerian Tribune just before we go to this Nigeria. It says, Tinubu approves expansion of Nigerian army to 12 divisions. Tinubu approves expansion of Nigerian army to 12 divisions. The Nigerian Tribune, OK's recruitment of 28,000 personnel to strengthen national security. So 28,000 officers are going to be added to the Nigerian army, and the idea is to strengthen national security, the president says. But there are other riders there as well on the Nigerian Tribune. Top left, we have 3 Uriri kidnappers plead guilty, sentenced to life imprisonment. 3 Uriri kidnappers, top left, plead guilty, sentenced to life imprisonment. OBJ tackles Oshoba on 2003 elections. That's to the top right, page 19 read, denies deceiving AD governors, and the former president says ex-Ogun governor unaware of several political undercurrents. Well, there are more stories there on the Nigerian Tribune. Let's see if we can take a few more as well regarding the Enugu Air veering off the runway as well. The NSIB says it has begun investigation into the Enugu Air mishap at Benin Airport. Let's see if I can just take more. ADC to Tinubu, Trump's letter won't save you from defeat. ADC to Tinubu, Trump's letter won't save you from defeat. I like the back and forth between the ADC presidential candidate, His Excellency Atiku Abubakar, and the incumbent president and those around him. Bayo Onanuga was also had to respond to him. Something tells me that, you know what, the presidents and the presidency may be paying attention to what Atiku Abubakar is saying, because they are always having some sort of response to his criticisms and tweets and all of that. So it looks good. There's been the back and forth. Atiku is saying, you know what, you paid some US to lobby, or lobbyists, to PR to lobby for you. The president is also saying, you know what, you also paid some US PR agencies as well to, protect you and lobby for you as well. So there's been that back and forth, both camps trading words as we continue to count down to the elections. And then the Enugu Air, still the same with the Nigerian Tribune, saying that the NSIB, that's the Nigeria Safety Investigation Bureau, saying that, you know what, we have begun investigation into what precisely happened with this particular Enugu Air mishap. The question to ask is, when will this investigation be ready? And will Nigerians ever get to see it? Because I remember an incident that played out along the Anthony area here in Lagos, where it was a particular helicopter crash on one of the pipelines, and I covered that particular story. And I remember, having to engage with some of the NSIB officials. But let's take a look at that.
Yes, indeed. Kelly, you trailed quite a number of important stories on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune just moments ago, and some of which, we could also speak to the follow-up about the Orire kidnappers, which is on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune, at the top corner to be precise. 3 Orire kidnappers plead guilty, sentenced to life imprisonment. And it's similar to the life sentence handed down to their commanders, the ones that had been arrested and paraded last year. And of course, we spoke consistently and exhaustively to that particular one, for which the DSS also said they would appeal because of the weight of the offenses committed by these suspects who have now been convicted, because we saw on live television how a teacher was beheaded and another teacher also paid the ultimate price amid this kidnapping. And so even prior to the sentencing, when the charges were laid on these 3 individuals, the ones that were charged right after the rescue mission, there were concerns, I recall, expressed by our guest, Mr. Daraki Toby, the newspaper review guest, that why wasn't there a murder charge, to these individuals? Because what we saw was kidnapping, terrorism, concealment of information, and conspiracy, with others. And there was one amongst the 3 who was also charged with recruiting, individuals into the Ansaru group. And so the DSS is also saying concerning this that the life imprisonment sentence is inadequate concerning the weight of offenses, especially because of the death of individuals amid the Orire kidnap incident. And so the DSS has expressed resolve to appeal this particular sentence as well, and we'll see how that plays out. But this is just to say that the life sentence is inadequate, not just concerning the murder of the 2 individuals, the teachers, but also because of the weight, the consequences that arise often as a result of the fight against insecurity in Nigeria, the fight against insurgency, the consequences in life, the continuing bloodshed that we see time and again. And so more often than not, there is the advocacy for the capital punishment to be applied. And here's where we recall the warning issued by the Edo State governor, for which commendations have been issued. He says there will be accelerated trial for these individuals, and they will be taken right to the ring road area of the state and eliminated. But there's also that concern about what comes before the courts, such that people who do not deserve the capital punishment do not get it. But in this case, the public outcry and the trauma and the horror that trailed this kidnapping incident makes it compelling that these guys get the ultimate punishment. But let's get to the next paper this morning, and there's so much to chew on as we look at the front page of the New Telegraph. Tinubu okays expansion of Nigerian Army to 12 divisions, recruitment of 28,000 men. That's on the front page. But there's also a potpourri of stories right at the top of the paper beneath the nameplate. We see here, Senate threatens arrest warrants for 42 MDAs over invitation snub. That's coming from the Senate this morning, as Senator Fabio apologizes to Oshomole over remarks. You find that one on page 4. There's also Lateef Jakonde Memorial Lecture, Responsible Media, Transparent INEC, Informed Voters, Key to Credible Polls. And lastly, beneath the nameplate, nothing new in present challenges PDP's facing. That's ascribed to the leader of one of the groups of the PDP, Saminu Turaki SAN. Says party has seen all seasons, but will the party get its acts together and present a formidable front ahead of the 2027 general elections? As it is, there are still discordant tunes coming from both camps within the main opposition party. now one of the main opposition parties, Kelly, right? As we now have the ADC and the NDC in the mix. But you have the next paper, Kelly.
Yes, let's take a look at this. Well, I'm going to go back to this Nigeria. This Nigeria, let's go back to this Nigeria. It leads with something else. 311 reps back state police as minority walks out. Opposition alleges constitutional violations despite backing controversial security reforms. Opposition alleges constitutional violations despite backing controversial security reforms. There's the story of DSS rescuing Final Four. We took that yesterday. Quickly to the Vanguard. Let's quickly take that before we get to our first conversation. The Vanguard leads with something else. Christian killings, Nigeria hiring lobbyists to mask insecurity. That's coming from one of the congressmen, Ted Cruz. Nigeria hiring lobbyists to mask insecurity, says officials have created environment that facilitates violence against Christians, says Nigerian officials waged public relations campaign against critics. Tinubu's government deceiving Nigerians over Trump's letter, Timi Frank alleges. That's a conversation we may need to explore in the coming days on this show. Yes, Bukola.
Do we have time for just one more paper before we go to our first conversation? Let's explore the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Kelly, have you taken the Guardian?
No.
Okay, so here's the Guardian for you. There's some politics here, or development rather, for primary decay, from primary decay to tertiary distress. Southeast in throes of tertiary healthcare infrastructure. That's a big story from the Guardian newspaper, and you'll find details on the inside pages 4 and 5 specifically, from primary decay to tertiary distress. And so this again speaks to capital releases. This time at the subnationals, we've been talking time and again about overlapping budgets at the federal level. But if there are issues around dilapidated infrastructure in the healthcare sector in the states, then we should also be asking questions of the state executives and be asking, for an audit of budgeting at that particular level, which according to reports and oftentimes most development experts are the most opaque. Budget transparency even at the state level are even more opaque than at the state level. And Kelly, perhaps that's another conversation that we should be exploring in the coming days. But you do, well to get into the story and get the details about Southeast being in the throes of tertiary healthcare infrastructure. But there are also some other stories on the front page of The Guardian. House approves state police bill amid walkout, includes guardrails, and other reports are quoting 311 House of Reps members throwing their weight behind the state policing bill for the amendment of the State Police Act to accommodate state police. So we're looking forward to what that translates into in terms of a new policing structure at the state level.
All right, so let's get to head to our very first conversation this morning as we take a look at Nigeria's budgeting culture. There are issues around our budget, a lot of controversies. The Deputy Speaker of the House of Reps has been in the news, and not for good reasons. We're back in just a moment as we take these thoughts of our guests. Please stay with us.
Our website channels.
Welcome back to the program, everyone. Mr. Vela Kwaga joins us live on the program. He's the Country Director, Budget Foundation. Thank you indeed. He joins us live here from Lagos. And then from the UK, Hamzat Lawal is the founder, Connected Development. He joins us from the UK. Gentlemen, thank you indeed for joining us here on the program. So much to explore with you as regards issues around the Appropriation Acts, budgeting culture, the controversies and revelations. Well, perhaps we should begin with Mr. Kwaga, because your foundation has done a fantastic job pointing out indeed some revelations around, oh my word, monies for musical instruments, some would say evangelical instruments and all of that, for bended churches. You spotted that. There's also the revelation about monies as well earmarked for worship places and palaces, both church and mosques. I'm wondering, what other revelations do we need to know at this point?
Thank you so much, Kelly, and good morning to you and Bukola in the studio. I wouldn't call them revelations, because these are things that have been happening for quite some time, over a decade, to be honest. And my organization has pointed these out as long as we have been analyzing the budget. So again, these are not new. These simply point to a complete failure of our legislature to properly vet the budget. A budget is a proposal. A budget is oftentimes made in circumstances of scarce resources. So where you see things like this, it's clear that the legislature doesn't believe Nigeria has scarce resources and would rather divert those resources to their own constituencies, quite literally. And Nigerians have to understand that because a budget is a projection, it means that every single naira that goes into it is meant to achieve an objective, is meant to achieve a goal. So the efficiency, the effectiveness of those monies is critical. I do not think that such findings show that the legislature believes in any of those things, to be honest. And, very quickly before I round up, I also want Nigerians to understand that the question of whether the legislature has the constitutional right to insert projects needs to be addressed. We need authoritative Supreme Court pronouncement on the legality of otherwise. Femi Falana SAN did take the federal government to court at one point, and he asked this question, and the response or the judgment from the court wasn't as robust as it could have been to provide a final pronouncement. The legislature needs to understand that its job is to check the executive, not to do the very thing the executive is meant to do.
So just before we yield to Mr. Lawal, so you have pointed out issues around monies budgeted for places of worship. Let me also ask you how it works. For instance, we discovered and heard that, monies were budgeted for the Super Eagles of Nigeria ahead of their qualifications. So I'm wondering, in your study of the budget as well, have monies always been budgeted for other tournaments as well, aside from football? There's basketball, there's volleyball. Do they budget monies as well ahead of their qualifications? When they do not qualify, what exactly plays out with those monies earmarked for those events?
So, with all sense of responsibility, I do have to say that the controversial Super Eagles budget, in principle, is not wrong. As at the time the budget was being passed, we did not know whether we would qualify or not. So I think it would have been wise to at least propose that some money be set aside. Again, a budget is a projection. A budget is not money actually spent. What is evidence that money has been spent is reports called budget implementation reports that are the statutory responsibility of the Budget Office of the Federation. There are also reports routinely published by the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation and sometimes by the Ministry of Finance. These entities, these institutions, are meant to provide rigorous, statistical, credible, and detailed information because they are part and parcel of the disbursement process. They are part and parcel of collecting records on utilization of monies. So I think Nigerians need to get these words into their lexicon: disbursement, utilization. When you budget, you then disburse monies, and you then even have to use monies before we can authoritatively say that this money has gone to X. Fourth, very important, often neglected, is audit. Again, I want to sound the alarm that the audit amendment bill is on the desk of Mr. President. Mr. President, we need you to sign that bill. We are using a 1956 legislation. Mr. President, this is urgent. This will fundamentally help and transform our PFM space. So again, to respond to your question, the fact that those monies are budgeted doesn't mean that they'll be spent. However, we have seen, frankly, ridiculously titled insertions and line items in the budget that show, quite frankly, that very little thought goes into public policy, and it appears that the budget is more of a cash grab by politicians, by persons in government, because with the number of institutional partners that collaborate on the budget, one would imagine, or one would think, that this is a document that is sacred. This is a document that is the result of evidence, of sequential thinking, of complex analysis, of data, of rigor, and most importantly, of ethical conduct. Government officials, whether political appointees or civil servants, usually take an oath. It's possible that oaths are meaningless in Nigeria, but one would think that persons who occupy these offices have some sense of responsibility to the Commonwealth and the Nigerian citizens that they have sworn to serve. Unfortunately, the budget is more or less a political bargaining tool between the executive and the legislature. And what the legislature has turned it into is more like a free-for-all. And if you notice the trend, if you correct for inflation and depreciation of the naira, but the size of the approved budget, which is not the proposed budget, the size of the approved budget has been increasing, in orders of hundreds of billions of naira since 2022, coinciding with 2023 when this administration came in. And that just goes to show you that the National Assembly has frankly been adding more and more. There's nothing stopping the National Assembly from doing this because, like I said, the Constitution is not very clear and the Supreme Court has not pronounced authoritatively on this matter.
And the National Assembly members could argue that they indeed have the powers of the purse. Speaking of which, in response to the outcry over this discovery by your agency, the Deputy Speaker has clarified that the 1 billion naira vote in the appropriation bill for church musical instruments in his constituency is intended for a broader youth engagement initiative, not solely for instrument procurement. Now, the more important question is, how do we situate this within the context of the law, even though the National Assembly has the powers of appropriation? Perhaps I should bring this to Mr. Hamzat Lawal for response. Just before you respond, let me highlight some of the things that Tracker would have us know based on their findings. 11 palace projects worth 5.85 billion naira have no identified locations, making public oversight almost impossible. None of the 45 implementing MDAs that will execute this project have the statutory mandates to do so. Among the agencies that will build palaces worth 22.15 billion naira are Nigerian Building and Road Research Institute, Federal Cooperatives College, Ibadan, Sheda Science and Technology Complex. So, Mr. Lawal, what are your thoughts on this? Does the National Assembly have the powers to allocate precious resources to support church institutions, to support the traditional institution, especially concerning the fact that the traditional institutions themselves are under the payroll of state governments?
I think, first of all, this shows how unserious we are when it comes to the budget process and the cycle itself. I say this because when we decide not to have conversation or host public hearing and even do consultation with various constituents, when this information is now made public, you would then be forced to provide detail, to provide more information and knowledge about it. And this has already created distrust in our society as it is. First, let me comment on the issue of Bende in Abia State, because this is a community I've lived in and worked in. And I've been getting calls since yesterday about, are we going to follow this money? Now, in Bende, you don't have adequate primary health care centers. You don't have adequate primary schools and even teaching aids. And I've also read the response of the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives. And after reading the response from his office, I started laughing. Even if this matter was a serious matter, it was quite funny. It was really funny because as much as issues around religion is sensitive, and even the issues around traditional rulers. So and just to be a bit sarcastic here, if we're now budgeting and allocating resources for churches, mosques, what happened to traditional, or what you call traditional institutions when it has to do with traditionalists? Because if we want to be an inclusive society, probably in being sarcastic, we should also budget for them. But let's be serious here, for crying out loud. We cannot have a system of government that have a lot of opacity and a lot of uncertainty. And we can't have this continually. And I think maybe it is time for us to activate SERAP to maybe approach the Supreme Court, because this could have been done by the federal government so that we can have clarity on what would be the role of the National Assembly on the budget process that is made. Because you can't say you're the one providing oversight, but then you're caught complicit in putting budget line items in the budget that has now raised a lot of concern and has turned into controversy. And then you have agency of government who have clear mandates as prescribed by the Constitution, but are now carrying out functions that are not theirs. Again, for me, I'm not surprised, because for the Nigerian people, this is new to them, and this is something we've done over the years as follow the money. I'm not surprised. And you see, we're going into an election cycle. The campaign will soon start. Next year's our elections. This is money for elections. Let's tell ourselves the truth. If we truly want to have systematic change that is sustainable, these resources that I am at are for elections. Because you see, speaking about the experience of even following the money itself, when you see appropriation around empowerment, because again, you can tie this appropriation of over 700 million or 1 billion to empowerment. What do they mean by empowerment? Because we've observed how they undertake this empowerment. It's about settling people who are their own loyalists and political party members. So, long story short, these resources, this money, sadly captured in the Appropriation Act, are for the elections that are coming.
Well, we would have to confirm that with evidence before we make our conclusions. But questions are tried definitely around extra budgetary spending. Many questions have been asked, for instance, about, bodies like the Renewed Hope Ambassadors, where is funding coming from? For instance, the First Lady making donations. Are they captured in the budgets, considering the fact that that particular office is not duly recognized by the Constitution? But there's a report that has come through, and I'm glad you talked about having lived in Bende in Abia State, for instance, and you can identify primary health care deficits there against the backdrop of this allocation to youth orientation and church empowerment. let's speak to budgets of the subnationals now, against the backdrop of similar concerns. And I'd like to bring it to Mr. Kwaila for you to talk to us about how we can follow the money in terms of independent and transparent audits of budgetings of the subnationals. I'm taking it to Mr. Kwaila now. I'd like you to talk to us about, the levels of transparency of budgets at the state level.
Great question. It's interesting that you ask that. The subnationals, from our research, by and large, over the years, have been far more detailed in budget implementation reports than the federal government ever has been. And I want to repeat that. The subnationals have been far more detailed and comprehensive in the publishing of their reports. Can more be done in terms of the translation of spending? Spending can be framed in different ways. We have something called the National Chart of Accounts, and that National Chart of Accounts provides ways that the government talks about how it spends its money. As it stands, the subnationals generally use 3 to 4 languages. There are other languages that can speak to the specific geographic location that money is going to. There are accounting languages that speak to programs, broad programs of government that show where money is going to. Oftentimes, states don't usually do that, but the federal government has never done that, or at least has not done that in the last 10 years. We do have some states that have fallen by the wayside. Rivers, of course, for obvious reasons, the state of emergency and the unfortunate impasse between the governor and the State House of Assembly. Recently, Akwa Ibom has not been publishing comprehensive, detailed budget implementation reports that contain analysis and explanations on administrative, economic, functional classification, that's National Chart of Accounts again, through which they spend this money. We have written to the Akwa Ibom state government and to the governor asking why this state has regressed in providing its information. However, as comprehensive as these budget implementation reports are, and they are, relatively comprehensive, they are still not the entire answer to how money is spent. What we expect is full audit. Now, what states do is that they present audited financial statements, or they present accountant general's reports, I beg your pardon, with audit certificates. Now, that's different from a full and comprehensive audit of the state's account. The state can present a financial statement of net assets and, net liabilities, or financial performance, or financial position, or cash flow. Those are all well and good, which states often do. But it is incomplete. The budget process is incomplete where there is no full, comprehensive, independent audit of the state's finances. So while we can see to a very large extent how much money was spent, how much money was raised, where these monies went to, etc., we do not get the full picture, and I want Nigerians to understand this. We do not get the full picture of how money is spent at the subnational level. So there needs to be the same kind of advocacy that we have towards the federal government. I'm not saying abuse your governor like how we abuse Tinubu. No one should even be abused. But we do need to bring this battle right to the doorsteps of the executive. And the institution to do that, unfortunately, are the state houses of assembly. But the state houses of assembly have been impaired. The state houses of assembly, by and large, do not have the political will nor the wherewithal, as many of them, often depend on the executive, for the release of their monies. I won't even go into a conversation around the judiciary. But it's clear that what we have in Nigeria isn't the separation of powers. So it should not be surprising that Nigeria is the way it is if the foundational principles that are meant to guide order and public policy and government have been eroded. Nigerians ought not to be surprised that the polity is going the way it is and we have the problems that we do. Now, I'm going to round up and I'm just going to make a very fine point. The reason why we advocate for the National Assembly not inserting projects, because, Bukola, I heard you ask that question, is because the legislature is not designed to do that work. By design, the legislature is, from history, has been created to serve as a check and a balance. That's why it's only the legislature that has the power to impeach the president. And I know we saw the viral clip of Senator Monguno saying that we will impeach the president. They are well within their rights to do so. No one is above the law. The president is not a god. The president is not infallible. The president is a public servant. And the National Assembly has the power to impeach the president if they see evidence or reason to. However, those powers must be exercised within reason. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that only the National Assembly has the power to summon any executive officer. Only the National Assembly has the power to summon or to call for the production of any document. And only the National Assembly has the power to provide oversight, monitoring, evaluation on the implementation of public policy, but not the development, not the proposing of projects for the citizens. They are meant to hear from the citizens and question the executive. The very thing we are doing as advocacy organizations, as budget, as code, as PLSI, that is what the National Assembly should be doing. I always say that in a perfect world, organizations like ours would not exist because the National Assembly would be doing their job. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case.
Well, you brilliantly highlighted the role of the National Assembly to be checks and balances. If we related that to the budget, it would look like that balancing is to balance the account of the Appropriation Act as it favors the National Assembly politically. But on the state budgeting processes, thanks for drawing our attention to the comprehensive nature of the accounts that they deliver. But the question, which is more important, would be the elements in the budget that speak to the priorities of budgeting at the state level, which is what I want to take to Mr. Hamzat Lawal. The Guardian today would have us know that there is a real infrastructure concern in the Southeast as far as primary healthcare is concerned. So from your experience with Follow the Money, what have you seen about priorities in state budgets? Perhaps you want to mention one or two states that you have had the cause to follow the money in terms of budgetary allocations. You may have to unmute, Mr. Lawal. Yes, please unmute.
Interestingly, as much as the budget for the federation or the federal government is open, that of state is more closed. Yes, we've laid our hands on a few states' budgets, sometime using the Freedom of Information instrument. But now what we've seen is investment in infrastructure, and those investment at the state level in infrastructure does not have to do with social services like primary school, like public health care centers or primary health care centers, or even access to potable drinking water in most rural communities. And over time, we've seen this circle where ideally before you budget and present your proposed draft to the State Assembly, you're meant to carry a needs assessment because you're meant to actually budget based on the needs and aspiration of the people. But in most cases, there are no needs assessment. The executive just sit in their comfort and roll out line items to different communities as it's me. But maybe I should cite the example of how our intervention was able to influence government to release resources, maybe in Adamawa State. I remember during our outreach program in 4 local governments, particularly in primary school, when we found out that the schools were not provided perimeter fencing, there are no adequate wash facilities. So it means that the only toilets they had, both males and female, were using this toilet. And in our research, and in some cases, we've seen is when males and females use one toilet in public schools, issues around rape and abuses would come up. So, and we saw practically firsthand where children were learning on very harsh and difficult setting. So we wrote, when we compiled this information, we wrote to the governor of the state and say, we've seen that you have a budget allocation. When would these releases happen? And how can we ensure that when these monies are released, it is judiciously used? At that time, the government were trying to even defend, not knowing that we've actually done our own outreaches and needs assessment. They were trying to defend themselves and say they're doing very well. And we had to provide them this evidence. And I agree with Voila. If we have legislative oversight providing evidence, because you cannot bring darkness and light and then you say, oh, you don't, or you see black and white and you try to deceive yourself. So when we provided this evidence, these monies were released, and because we were following the money, both the contractors, which are from the private sector, ensured that they used it. I remember even during the procurement process, we were also involved and engaged in that value chain to ensure that we know what the bill of quantities were, and engaging the community themselves. Because you see, when you engage community in the budget cycle, they take ownership. And when they take ownership, you will not have vandalized public utilities. When they take ownership, what happens is it would last. And because this is actually an investment happening in their own community, and in most cases, when you don't carry them along, then they think that, oh, well, come and use it yourself. So again, for us, it's about providing needs assessment, because when you do needs assessment, you're actually going to implement a budget appropriation that it is the yearning of the community themselves. So they take ownership, it lasts, and it serves most importantly, because today across Nigeria, when you see projects that are abandoned, it's because needs assessment were not undertaken. And then you release resources, there are no appropriate oversight to them. So what happens is you see collusion between the contractors and public officials, and then you have abandoned projects. So I believe that when we strengthen, this process itself, then we'll see more openness in the budgetary appropriation, releases, and most importantly, utilization. But most states, when you go to their website, you do not see the budget appropriation. And in most cases, when you write Freedom of Information Act, some states still hide under, oh, it has not been domesticated in our state. And this is a federal law we're talking about. They hide on that.
Yeah. Well, clearly here, if there's one thing Nigerians need to pay attention to, I think they should be paying attention to the 2026 budget. But let's bring in Mr. Kwaga again into this conversation. Mr. Kwaga, Senator Adamu Alero has been quoted as saying that the Buhari left Nigeria with 75 trillion naira debt. Tinubu has added 80 trillion naira to it in borrowing, and he says yet we have not even implemented the 2026 budget. I'd like you to speak to that. My second question would be, there are those who think that perhaps the current administration are bad managers of Nigeria's fiscal policies, and the reasons are not far-fetched. They are arguing that this current administration removed subsidy, devalued our naira and currency, without perhaps considering the wider possible consequences and implications to Nigeria's debt servicing burden. What do you say?
So I want to start off by saying something that might sound stupid to some. Politicians don't like transparency. Politicians don't like accountability. That is not peculiar to Nigeria. That's generally human nature. Persons in power, persons in authority, generally don't want to be transparent. They don't want to be accountable. So this behavior is not a bug. It's a feature of political systems, especially systems where certain individuals are given enormous, sometimes, discretionary powers. Now, the statement made by the distinguished senator is correct, but he did not add the caveat that this was as a result of, the increase by the new administration also came on the heels of the depreciation exercise and the high levels of inflation. Now, this administration has borrowed considerably, but if we correct for inflation, if we correct for depreciation, this administration likely hasn't borrowed as much as maybe 40 trillion. I'm just giving a ballpark figure. However, the senator was correct to have said they have not seen evidence of the budget's implementation, which I find sort of hilarious coming from a person who has every right to summon the president to defend that lack of implementation. So, Mr. Senator, why aren't you calling for the president? Why aren't you suspending any form of disbursement, since you have the power to, you have the powers of appropriation? Why are you not calling for investigations? Why are you not summoning the heads of these agencies repeatedly to give you weekly updates? And not just you, but the people as well. So the problem with a lot of these types of utterances is that the National Assembly, the same National Assembly that provided constant extensions, as I recall, the 2025 budget has been pushed to September. So I am struggling to reconcile a National Assembly that has given, and by the way, there's no evidence that those extensions were debated rigorously, nor do we have evidence that senators stood up to say, no, we are not extending until we have this evidence. So, this type of utterances somewhat seem like grandstanding. You are putting the cart before the horse. So the issue of debt, yes, this administration has been in the news to have collected or proposed to collect a lot of debt, but debt or these facilities do not just come as easy as one would think. In fact, a lot of Nigerians may not be aware that this administration revised our medium-term debt strategy, and there's a specific fiscal position that this current administration thinks it can stay in terms of debt to GDP, debt to revenue, etc. And I am not sure, but I believe that as at 2025, I think the latest or the earliest budget implementation reports, this administration is still within reasonable limits, prescribed by international financial institutions. But this does not take away the problem of a lack of data. And I spoke, earlier about the budget implementation reports, about the reports from the Office of the Accountant General, and the reporting from the Ministry of Finance that should provide Nigerians, like the states are doing, with comprehensive information on functional classification of spending, administrative classification of spending, economic classification, programmatic classification, geocode classification. The National Chart of Accounts is a federal document. So it is always bizarre to see that the federal government is the one that does not even provide this information, that the reports from the Accountant General are done randomly and do not even talk to documentation or budget implementation reports, that even the Ministry of Finance in its coordinating function, does not provide comprehensive reporting that speaks to all of these issues. And again, the issue of audit, that is something we want the president to pass. That bill needs to be passed into law.
Well, it's a fine place to anchor our conversation. I know that Mr. Lawal has been itching to just say something, maybe just a yes or no question, Mr. Lawal. Do you think the current administration have been bad managers of Nigeria's fiscal policy? Just a yes or no, please.
I'm currently a student at the Institute of Development Studies. There's nothing like yes or no answer.
Well, let's leave it there. Hamzat Lawal is the founder, Connected Development. He's joined us from the UK. Mr. Viala Kwaga is the country director, Budget Foundation. Gentlemen, thank you indeed for your insights on the program.
Thank you for having us.
Well, this is the morning brief. Let's take a moment. When we come back, we'll get to spotlight the 2027 elections and some of the concerns. We're back in just a moment. Please stay with us.
Welcome back from a scrutiny of our appropriation process at the federal and state level. Let's now move to our election management process. Of course, the Ekiti election, the latest off-cycle election, has been concluded with results, with commendations on the logistics management process of that particular election as against what obtained in the past, but with very huge concerns around voter inducement, vote buying, and all of those related issues. But of course, Election Watch Yaga Africa has produced a document that is very important and is at this time needed as we head into the next general elections in 2027. But of course, with another test coming through for INEC, the Osun election in August. And this looks at our election results management process against the backdrop of the provisions of the Electoral Act 2026 as amended. Joining us now from our Abuja studio is Mr. Samson Itodo, the Executive Director of Yaga Africa, and of course is a good governance advocate and of course a key election observer of our election process. Mr. Itodo, thank you for coming on the program and thank you indeed for holding on.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone.
Yes, we've been looking at the latest document produced by your organization titled Securing the Vote, and perhaps you want to begin by taking us through the elements in this particular document. I see here what the Electoral Act 2026 changed, and there are some pointers. Transmission now compulsory, IREV becomes a legal record, and a second direct transmission. Perhaps you want to break this down for the electorate who should be interested in this, by the way.
Well, thank you very much. You know very well that the weakest link in our entire election administration or election value chain is the results management process. That is a process that is very contested, perhaps the most contested component of our electoral process after party primaries and candidate nomination. What we did is to release a policy brief on the electronic transmission of results, because the new act makes transmission of results to the IREV compulsory. Now, there are two fundamental findings. The first one, which the public needs to be aware of, is that the results from the polling units are not transmitted automatically to the INEC IREV. They go through a validation process before they are published on the IREV. And this is one of the major findings in this policy brief, because if you look at the Ekiti elections and the way the results hit the IREV, they hit the IREV in bulk and not streaming in. So let's look at Ekiti. When the first results or the set of results that hit the INEC IREV portal came in at 4:10 p.m., that's 1 hour, 30 minutes after the close of polls. There were 4 results that hit the portal. Few minutes later, the figure rose to about 247. When you look at between 6:32 and 6:37, over 1,100 results made it to the portal. So if you have 1,100 results making it to the IREV portal within 5 minutes, it just confirms the fact that INEC validates the results before they are uploaded and published on the IREV. That's the first thing that the public needs to be aware of. The second point is that INEC, through its regulation, has introduced what we call the electronic EC8A. In other words, what the public knows is that once elections have been concluded at the polling units and the results entered into the EC8A, party agent sign and the presiding officer signs, they take an image of the result sheet with the BVAS and transmit your upload to the IREV. The new procedure is that once polls have been concluded at the polling units and the result sheets have been signed and stamped, the presiding officer will now enter those figures on the hard copy result sheets into an electronic EC8A on the BVAS and then transmit to INEC. So in other words, you have one results transmitted in 3 different forms. So the first one is the hard copy results. The second one is the electronic EC8A on the BVAS. And the third one is the scanned result sheet that we see on the IREV. What INEC said is that the electronic EC8A is for validation. That again is subject to interrogation and question. But one thing is clear, is that the public is not fully aware of this new regime of results management. And some of the questions we're asking is that if you have 3 results pathways, if there is a discrepancy between these 3 different results, which one takes precedence? The second point is that INEC needs to explain this back-end validation that happens before results make it to the IREF, because when the process is opaque and it's not visible to the public, it creates room for suspicion. So when you look at the 5 different stages of results management, only 2 of them are visible to the public. The first one is the recording of the results sheet at the polling unit, and the second one is what is visible on the IREF. The other 3 procedures are not visible to the public. And so we'll be calling for transparency, that INEC needs to issue protocols, for how results are managed so that the public can understand, especially with the new provisions in the Electoral Act. The second thing is INEC needs to publish the EC8Bs, that is the ward collation result sheets, and the local government result sheets on the IREF. Because if you publish only the EC8As, that's the results at the polling unit, the public needs to know what happened at the ward level, what happened at the local government level. And our belief is that INEC has the infrastructure, to publish this, because it has promised in time past that it was going to do so. So Mr. Todo, do you think this is perhaps a deliberate attempt, to get the process this complicated? Do you think it's a deliberate attempt? Because I remember the last elections, when we got to the INEC office, where the results were being collated. By the time I entered where some of those officials were, I saw them with calculator and biros and sheets, calculating seriously. So is this a deliberate attempt to perhaps leave this process this way because of interests? And secondly, this issue of the manual process, like you've said, are we still going to see that at the collation centers?
So your question about whether this is a deliberate, first, let's recognize that the National Assembly passed a law, and the law under section 60 requires that INEC must transmit results electronically to the IREF. It's mandatory. Although the provisor in that particular act, or that particular provision, says that for collation and declaration of results, the physical EC8A will be the primary source. And this was a subject of contestation because that provisor was not needed. And this is what the National Assembly did by intentionally and deliberately scuttling the entire process of electronic transmission of results. And you are aware of those debates. The second is, the law says that in the event of communication failure, now what INEC ought to have done with its regulations and guidelines is to explain what is a communication failure and what happens when there's a communication failure. What the regulations and guidelines says under paragraph 40, it says that the presiding officer will submit a report. The guidelines or the regulations does not say what is the format of the report, what is the constitutive elements of the report, what will happen to the report when it is submitted. So there are a lot of gray areas that INEC needs to explain, because if it doesn't explain this using the instrumentality of its regulations and guidelines, people will continue to infer or suspect that there is some interest out there that it's not geared towards deepening the transparency of the process. My assumption is that some of these innovations are introduced to deepen the integrity of the process. But we should not complicate the process any further, because the more we complicate it, the more confusing it is. Because like you referenced, one of the biggest challenges of the results management process is the quality of the people who are managing the process. And what kinds of trainings do they receive? The kinds of trainings that are required for the management of results is not the one where you do overnight. It has to be long-term training. You see those computational errors, some of them are just a function of poor training, which is why we have recommended in the policy brief that INEC needs a separate manual for results management so that everyone involved in the management of results is adequately trained. But it's not just training, it's also oversight of those individuals who are managing the process. Sometimes you train those people, but they become compromised, by politicians, and they undermine the process.
Mr. Otodo, let's assume that a check or a form of oversight for these people who results process is the electronic forms ECATA that you referred to earlier on, which is a transference of the hard copy from ECATA into an electronic form ECATA. Now, the party agents will append their signatures to the hard copy from ECATA. In case after an election has been concluded and aggrieved parties are headed to court to challenge the outcome of a result, if the hard copy from ECATA is different from what we find on the portal, can hard copy from ECATA be admissible in court?
Well, that's a brilliant question, and that's why we have said INEC needs to issue a protocol to explain this. One of the bigger questions is if you have 3 results from one polling unit and there is a discrepancy, which one takes precedence? Now, if you look at the design of section 60 sub 3 and the provisor, which says that for collation and declaration of results, the EC8As, the physical EC8As will be the primary source of result. The big question is, what if that primary EC8A is the one that is falsified and compromised? And that's why the provisor in section 60 sub 3 was unnecessary. The politicians put it there deliberately because of instances of this nature, because they know very well that when they want to rig elections, they compromise INEC officials to mutilate and falsify and alter figures on the EC8A. So when the EC8A, the physical EC8A is already compromised, then what you will be validating, what you will be declaring is a false result. But the law now confers primacy on the physical result. And this is the most unfortunate and perhaps disappointing and dark side of the 2026 Electoral Act. The National Assembly didn't need to place that primacy, because what was the IREF supposed to serve? It was supposed to serve the purposes of validation. Once election have been concluded at the polling unit, you take an image of it, upload on the IREF, so that at the collation, even if results have been manipulated, the physical EC8As have been altered, at the collation officer will look at the results directly transmitted from the polling unit and compare. And so when there is a discrepancy, you rely on the one that was directly transmitted from the polling unit. Unfortunately, this is the problem with the 2026 Electoral Act. The politicians, those in the National Assembly, already designed this process to deliver a certain outcome, because they know that part of the tactics in the playbook of election riggers is to confer the primacy that they have conferred now on the EC8, the physical EC8As.
Very, very worrying indeed. And if there's any time that the saying suffices that eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, it will be now against the backdrop of the Nigerian elections. But we must anchor at this point. There's so many other levels to explore on that document provided by Yaga, and Nigerians would do well to explore it on their own. Perhaps they would find it on all your platforms. Mr. Samson Itodo is the Executive Director of Yaga Africa, and he's also a good governance advocate. Thank you indeed for coming on the program.
Thanks, always a delight. Thank you.
Well, from Election Watch, we're headed back to the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, and Kelly has got this one.
Well, Bukola, Lagos Nigerians, what we're hearing is that there's chaos, confusion, and commotion on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. It's a total lockdown, shutdown from what we're hearing. There you go, the images on your screen there. That's the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, and commendations to our colleagues who are firing all of the videos you're going to be seeing for the next 2 to 3 minutes. But guess what? Jeffrey is with us. Jeff, where exactly are you at this time? What are you hearing? What are you seeing? I'm told that we've lost signals with Jeff. Well, but that's the update. It's a total lockdown today, Friday. Oh my word! I'm not sure where do we go from here, because when Jeff joined us the last time, he was somewhere headed towards the Berger area. Thankfully, I think we can see those from LASMA there, the Lagos State Traffic Management Agency, LASMA. I think we can see the FRC there, thankfully, as well. But I hope that we can have some respite on that axis. It's
now,
a Friday.
This looks like utter chaos, and many commuters would have to resort to what Nigerians would humorously call Legady's Benz today, particularly those on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Because if you look at, I believe, the outbound Lagos side of the expressway, it's a total lockdown. And on the other side, I believe after the accident, where you seem to have a free-for-all, they have been unable so far at this particular point in time as we speak to evacuate the vehicles that have caused this gridlock. And so we're using this opportunity to call on the traffic management agencies, Trace, LASMA, the Federal Road Safety Corps, and the police force to deploy to the scene as soon as possible, such that that particular road can be cleared. Kelly, I feel for Jeffrey at this point in time. We don't know where exactly he is, but he will be joining us shortly to tell us what he is seeing from where he is.
Well, so the last time he said he was just somewhere under the Berger Bridge, and that's the last we heard from him. Hopefully we can get him back with us, in the course of the program, just to give us updates. I hope that, you see, Bukola, in developed and saner clients, for instance, the motorists and road users who caused this traffic, for instance, there would have been cameras that would capture them and tell perhaps if someone was at fault, if there was an overspeeding or something that caused this, that is making the larger chunk of Nigerians having to go through this. This isn't good for anybody's business at all. Even there are health consequences as well. I'm not sure exactly how the weather has been, but staying in traffic like this, and then the economic consequences. People are having to burn fuel that they've had to buy over 1,000 naira per liter. So on all fronts, this doesn't look good at all. And for those who are still at home, if you do not have any serious business while you have to be on that axis today, it's better you just stay at home. Yeah.
And Jeffrey is communicating with us via other channels, and he's saying drivers are sitting on the pavement hoping for some form of movement as gridlock persists. He says it's literally a no movement situation here. According to Jeffrey, he also says the road that leads from under the Big Foot at Baga towards New Garage heading to the expressway. Oh, he's sending a video telling us what it looks like, and I believe that's what you're seeing on your screen now, with vehicles driving against traffic. And this is one of the reasons, Kelly, that Nigerians who live in diaspora can no longer process the Nigerian experience, because to them it becomes a traumatic one, as having to combine the challenges of resumption at work daily at an early hour, and adding the trauma of staying in traffic for long hours to that mix is a no-no that impacts negatively on not just physical health but also mental health. Just take a look at that. This is trauma for a lot of people.
For a lot of people.
Yes.
And there are more vehicles coming into Lagos today. There are more vehicles leaving Lagos today. Trucks as well. So I'm just wondering, oh my word. I know one of the major churches is, along this axis as well. They're due for national programs, I think, in the coming days. I hope that we can manage this so that Nigerians don't have to go through this kind of experience. But let's switch gears now and get to spotlight again Rivers politics. We did some yesterday. Let's get to talk about a few more issues, especially following that endorsement from the governor of that state, Mr. Sim Fubara, endorsing Okechinda for governor. Well, let's get some perspective. We're joined by a former commissioner for employment generation. He's the Rivers ADC governorship aspirant, and the 2023 PDP presidential campaign spokesman, Rivers State, Mr. Leonu Ubasa. I hope I got that correctly. Thank you so much, Mr. Inwibubasa. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Ubasa. Well, from the standpoint where you are, I'm not sure exactly how you're reading and receiving the news playing out in your state. First, somebody from the PRP was killed sadly 2 days ago. Perhaps we should begin from there. What are you hearing?
Well, it's unfortunate that we had the issues of death in Rivers State about 3-4 days ago of that incident in Omok. Investigations are still ongoing to ascertain the very reasons for that death. We are yet to hear from security agencies whether it's politically motivated or not. Until then, we can say more of the deaths in Rivers State.
All right. And then to the big one, your governor has now endorsed Okechinda. He has asked everyone who loves and supports him to, fall in line. So I'm just wondering, how are you also assessing the position of the governor of Rivers State this time?
Well, that statement from the governor of Rivers State was the most unfortunate statement we expected from a man who woke up one morning and informed Rivers State that the state was under political siege and that his seat was being threatened by forces within and outside of Rivers State, and that the forces aim to kidnap and appropriate Rivers State to themselves as a private estate, and therefore he expected that Rivers people should join him to fight such dark forces and liberate their state to be an independent state where power will be returned to the people. And of course, that was something every person had wanted, because the 8 years of Barrister Nyesom Wike as governor has been very harrowing in terms of the experiences in maladministration of the state, and that was something to be welcomed. And then the state rallied around Governor Sim Fubara, and then that struggle began. And of course, the rest is history of how many people went down, how many people's political career perished. Local government chairmen who were, of course, elected by the people were removed strangely by the Supreme Court, and so many things in Rivers State. And then the same man, having ruled out the people to fight, is coming back to say, I'm going back to my family, and that whoever believes in me people join me to support the same family. This is the family you told us has appropriated Rivers State. So the question that the governor needs to answer before people will even consider what he has said is, those things you said about Barrister Nyesom Wike and his political cabal, have they changed? Is Rivers State now safe in the hands of those in that corrupt coalition called the Rainbow Coalition? Are we now sure that we are no longer in a state where we are going to serve a man on our knees, which he said he was not going to govern on his knees? Are we now sure that we are not going back to donate our liver, our kidneys, and our intestine, as the governor once said earlier, that led people to join into fight? So you can see that this is a situation where a leader has railroaded its people and brought them to the brink of the Red Sea and pushed them in and walked back to Pharaoh to live in Pharaoh's palace. It is very unfortunate. And of course, for him to even say that, oh, if you know you are hanging around me because there's something to get, just know that there's nothing to get. Sim Fubara in that statement validated that he does not have followers, that people that are around his followers have left him, and probably those that are hanging around him are just people who are transactional. A real leader cannot say that those that are still hanging, if you are expecting something from me. So he is no longer a leader. He remains the governor of Rivers, but I don't think any person is following him. And that advice to join into Rainbow Coalition, I want to say that Rivers people have made their decision and they have told Steve Fubara to your tents, O Israel. And so Rivers people are going back to their tents. We will go back to our walls, to our units, and we need to sit down to recalibrate our own political journey and see what we can do to redeem our state from the hands of Wike's political hegemony.
You know, but even if Governor Sim Fubara had fought this all the way through and refused to surrender to what many would term political intimidation, should Riverians, because Riverians are at the heart of this, have taken him seriously, really, considering the hard facts of the fallout between political godfather and godson, which remain to this day unknown to most Nigerians?
I'm not very clear on your question, on the direction of that question, please.
Simply put, the reason both men fell out remains unclear. So even if he decided to take this fight, you know, which is, in your own words, liberating River State from the hegemony of dark forces, he never at any point in time told Riverians what the reason was of the reason for the fight between himself and Barrister Nyesom Wike was. And so based on that lack of transparency, should the people of River State have taken the governor seriously?
What I will say is that, like I've said in my earlier statement, it will be difficult to deny that he didn't have a reason for the fight. He told us his reason, and those reasons are the ones I have presented. He said Rivers State, that governance was becoming difficult for him because they wanted the treasures of Rivers State, and that the monies of Rivers State were being siphoned, and he has been given conditions that will not be able to work with governance. And so it was about the state resources. It was about protecting the state from being looted. So that was his reason. If that was not the clear reason, it means ab initio we were deceived. If there's any other reason that he has that we don't know today, it simply means that we were deceived. And if we were deceived, it simply still means that he is not a leader to be trusted. And so we cannot say we truly don't know the reason between why the fight started, because he told us your account, your treasury was about to be looted, and that all they wanted is for him to hand over the treasury of River State. So that's the reason he made us believe. And of course, it is clear by all the properties that was acquired illegally by the former governor, and all the things that are still going on in the state today, under his dictates. So clearly, was for the soul of Rivers State. And of course, the soul of every bill is tied to his politics and economy. And that was the reason he gave us. And we went out with him. And so if that reason is no longer tenable today, or that was not the true reason, then he simply deceived the people.
Well, so this is clearly perhaps a case of if you can't beat them, then join them.
Well, it is difficult to take it in just one straight line. First of all, was he ready to fight? Did he try, fail, and later submitted? Or from the beginning, was he completely insincere and just wanted to cause a stir and put a lot of people in harm's way? Because if you wanted to fight, the resources of Rivers people, their support, was enough resources for you to fight the system. And so you didn't harness the resource of support that you had across the 23 local governments. Most of the leaders of Rivers State, especially our elders and strong political leaders, stood by him. And so if we lack the will to fight, then he has violated scriptures. Because the Bible says clearly, if a man wants to go to war, first of all, look at your arsenal, so that you don't get midway and surrender and become a ridicule to society. And if you want to fight, no matter how little your strength is, keep to your words. I remember Governor Fubara said, if it takes that his life will be given for the liberation of Rivers State, that he was ready. Today, did he give his life? No. The decision he took a few days ago is the most selfish decision any leader will take. He has only gone into self-preservation and did it consider that Rivers State was handed to him through the ballot boxes or by any other means that it came in 2023.
I'm sure his supporters may not agree with you. Some will say perhaps maybe he's doing this for the people of Rivers State. Goodluck Jonathan in 2023 said, you know what, no blood of any Nigerian is worth this particular office. Maybe, I don't know, I do not speak for him, but perhaps maybe that's why he's doing this. But
no. Let's get it clearly.
But let's stay with let's stay with the politics.
Said so, but he said, "I will give my life." Goodluck said, "I don't want any life to go." Okay. But Steve said, "I will give mine."
All right.
And when the time came, he couldn't give it, not even his word.
He's only human. He's not Jesus. But let's leave that. And I like the fact that you politicians, especially in Rivers State, know how to use the scriptures or quote the scriptures. We had the PRP governorship candidate on the program yesterday. He was quoting a lot of scriptures, and you have also told that direction and path. But let's stay with the politicking in Rivers State. Where are we in terms of opposition? Where does perhaps this incident of someone of the opposition being killed leave those of you in the opposition camp, so long as the politicking of Rivers State is concerned?
Well, I've actually said every person, most people are in political parties, and if someone has an accident and dies, you won't say because it's in opposition, that's why the accident occurred. Like I've said earlier, I have not completely been informed, either by authorities or by informal sources, that the death that took place a few days ago is politically motivated. The police need to come out clearly and let us know about that. So I don't want to push the issue of death as one of those things that we need to look at in politics. But as an opposition, in Rivers State, the opposition is prepared. I'm of the ADC. And as of today, ADC has cleaned its house, and we have a focus in delivering on the mandate, our mandate for the people to bring back Rivers State from the hands of our captors. And that's a very tall order that we have. But I can tell you that equally tall is our determination to bring that change to Rivers people. because it is an easy election for Rivers State. Why? Because the governor has not performed. Is it while Godfather has continued in his oppressive manner in Rivers State, and of course his choices has remained very clannish. And so Rivers people see through all this, and therefore, as an opposition, we are prepared to face the day when the
Well,
time falls.
Mr. Nwebubasa, I'm wondering if that aspiration of yours is taller than that of the Rainbow Coalition, and I'm going to get to that by expanding it in just a moment. I appeal to you to hold on for us as we get to our colleague, Jeffrey, who's set to bring us an update on the state of things on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, where an accident reportedly occurred as far back as midnight today, but with huge consequences on the expressway. We'll get to you shortly. But Jeffrey, where are you right now, and what is the state of affairs as far as management is concerned? You need to unmute, Jeffrey.
All right, sorry, Bukola. As you can see, my tie is literally off. I had to go and came down from the car, to find out exactly what's going on. I've been able to get to Berger. I'm heading towards the new garage area, but it's still a gridlock. It's still a lockdown, literally. I was outside trying to film. It's coming live to the studio, but the vehicle started moving, so I had to hop back into the car to just this snail speed that we're using to get to wherever we're getting. So that's the situation of things. So if I switch my camera, you can see I'm somewhere. I wish I can take this out of where I am. So where you're looking at, if you see that yellow bus, is somewhere around the express road. That's the express road heading out into Lagos. That's inbound Lagos. But the vehicles on the other side of the road, I don't think you can see it properly, but everywhere is locked down. So this is just when you're coming from Berger, the Bigfoot towards New Garage, which is more like an off-ramp if you're coming into Lagos. That is where we are. I am at the moment. I mean, literally, I was trying to get to a point where I will get an aerial view, maybe within the show, where you can see this properly. I had that opportunity, but because vehicles were moving and I couldn't just leave my car on the way because, Nigerians will literally scream at me for standing on their way. So that's where we are right now. Okay, we're moving slowly, close to the roundabout around New Garage area. So that is the situation of things as we speak. Bukola, Kelly.
Jeffrey, we really do feel for you, and I can see a fly there also competing for your limelight. We hope that you get out of that very difficult situation soon. I imagine what we would need at this point in time is a tractor to forklift those articulated vehicles away from the accident area. And navigating the gridlock, to get to that point may be difficult, but we hope that they can find a thoroughfare on the other side of the expressway where we have, a free highway. But Jeffrey, our prayers and our thoughts are with you. Do stay safe. Let's head back into the studio now, where we have Mr. Nwebubasa with us. Pardon me if I didn't get your name correctly, but as we look ahead to 2027 now, don't you think an alliance will be more appropriate to rival the very intimidating power of incumbency and monopoly of resources that the Rainbow Coalition will be presenting to what some would say, certainly win the election in Rivers State?
Well, let me start by saying that the rainbow is a fleeting natural phenomenon. It changes based on weather. And so it was the most appropriate name to give to that group because they don't stand a chance. Talking about intimidating power of incumbency. Who is the incumbent? We have a man in government house. He never knew how his election was won. So he doesn't even know what election means. You talk about funds. Money is not everything in election. We know that Rivers State election has been characterized by heavy bribing, violence, intimidation, institutional malpractices. As I have said it before, and I want to say it again. When the people are determined to be free, there is no obstacle that is strong enough to break the will of such a people. We live in River State, we politic in River State, I work in River State. I'm a medical doctor and I practice here. I meet with patients every day and I know the poverty and the pain that Rivers people are going through. And so for those of us that do business here and interact with the people daily, you can tell their pain. And so when that determination comes, it is going to be clear to all that no matter what comes, no matter the intimidation, no matter the force, Rivers people will stand strong to demolish whatever coalition that we.
A really very sad picture and frame there about Rivers and the people of Rivers States, and for all of the natural resources that state has in its coffers. It's really, really sad to hear this. But we must thank you because we are absolutely pressed for time. Dr. Lenonu Inwibu Basa. Was that close?
Inwibu Basa. You called Lenonu, right?
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Lenonu Inwibu Basa.
Thank you so much. He's a former Commissioner for Employment Generation, Rivers ADC Governorship Aspirant, 2023 presidential, PDP presidential campaign spokesman in Rivers State. Thank you indeed for your time on the program.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful.
All right, so that has been our serving indeed for today and the week. Again, the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway is on the news. We'll keep bringing you updates and highlights of what exactly is playing out there. We have our eyes and ears on the ground. We're back again on Monday. Thank you indeed for your time and company. I am Kelly Egiga. Sunrise Daily is next.
Against all odds, do have a restful weekend. We'll be back again on Monday. I am Bukola Koka.